At the family meeting, my children rejected and humiliated me, but I already had a plan in motion that would leave them with no inheritance. And if you've ever felt like your own flesh and blood sees you as a burden, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Helen Miller. I'm 64 years old, and I live in a 2-story house in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago, a house I bought brick by brick, working double shifts at a textile mill for 30 years. A house where I raised 3 children on my own after their father left us when the youngest was barely 2. That October afternoon, when the air smelled of rain and the maple trees on the street were beginning to turn, I had spent the entire morning cooking roast chicken, red skin mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, homemade biscuits. My hands, wrinkled and spotted with burns from so many years in the kitchen, had kneaded the dough with the same love as always, because I thought, foolish me, that this meeting would be different. The dining room was set as it had been in the best of times. My mother's good china, the set I had inherited from her, gleamed under the light of the chandelier. There were fresh flowers in the center, orange chrysanthemums I had just bought at the farmer's market. Everything smelled of home, of family, of those Sundays when my children were little and I was their whole world. But when they arrived, first Richard, my eldest at 38, dressed in that stiff gray suit he wears to intimidate people at his accounting firm, then Laura, 35, with her designer handbag and heels that clicked like gavels against the hardwood floor, and finally Kevin, the youngest at 32, with that perpetual air of self-satisfaction he'd developed since graduating from law school. I knew something was terribly wrong. They didn't greet me with hugs and kisses like they used to, barely a dry, distant, "Hey, Mom." They sat in the chairs as if they were in a boardroom, not the house where they grew up, where they took their first steps, where I had patched up their scraped knees and comforted them through nightmares. Richard was the first to speak, after no one touched the food I had prepared with so much love. His voice had the same tone he used with his delinquent clients, cold and calculating. "Mom, let's stop with the theatrics. This house is too big for you. You're too old to maintain it. And frankly, it's a waste for a woman your age to live alone in a place like this." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Theatrics? A waste? What are you talking about, Richard? This is my house. I bought it with my own sweat. Paid off every last cent. I raised you here, Laura interrupted me with that fake smile she'd perfected since marrying that pretentious developer. "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. What Richard is saying is true. Just look at this place. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a yard, a deck. What do you need all this space for? You could live very comfortably in a small apartment. Or better yet, in an assisted living facility where they can take care of you like you deserve." Assisted living? My voice cracked. Kevin, my baby, the one who had slept with me until he was 8 because he was terrified of the dark, cleared his throat. "It's the most sensible thing, Mom. And look, it's not like we want to kick you out, but this property is worth a lot of money. If we sell it, you could live comfortably on your share, and we could resolve some financial commitments." There it was, the naked, cruel truth. My children, the kids I had raised by sacrificing my youth, my health, my dreams, were sitting at my table planning my exile. "Financial commitments?" I asked, feeling the blood rush to my head. Richard sighed, as if I were a foolish child. "Mom, I have 3 kids to support, private school tuition, the mortgage on my condo in the Gold Coast. Laura has credit card debt, and Kevin just opened his own firm. We need capital, you understand? And you've already had your turn," Laura added, inspecting her acrylic nails with indifference. "You've raised your family. You've worked. You've lived your life. Now it's our turn." Kevin leaned forward with that lawyerly gaze he had learned to use to persuade judges. "Think about it, Mom. What are you going to do with this house when you can't climb the stairs anymore? When you need help and no one is around? It's better to be safe than sorry." I looked at them one by one, searching their eyes for any trace of the love I had given them without limits, without conditions. But I found only coldness, calculation, and almost indecent haste to get rid of me. "And if I refuse?" I whispered, though I already knew they had an answer ready. Richard's smile turned colder. "Well, we hope you won't refuse, Mom, because we've already consulted a lawyer." He glanced at Kevin, who nodded. "And if necessary, we can start legal proceedings. A medical evaluation, a psychiatric one, to prove you're no longer in a condition to make important decisions." The air left my lungs. They were threatening me. My own children were threatening to have me declared incompetent to steal my house. "Incompetent?" I managed to articulate. "Don't look at it that way, Mom," Laura said, feigning sweetness. "It's for your own good. You can't handle all this by yourself. You need someone more responsible to make the important decisions." I fell silent, feeling the floor open up beneath me. The chicken was getting cold, the biscuits were turning hard, the flowers were beginning to wilt. And I, Helen Miller, the woman who had worked until her hands bled to give them everything, was becoming a stranger in my own home. That night, after they left, without so much as a goodbye, without even taking a plate of the food I had made with such love, I sat on the living room sofa, the same one where I had rocked them as babies, and cried until I had no tears left. But amidst those tears, something began to grow, a seed of dignity that had lain dormant for too long. Because what my children didn't know was that their mother had more than one plan up her sleeve, and they had just woken up the wrong woman. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake remembering, as if my mind were an old film playing on a loop, and every memory was another stab, deeper than the last, because I realized there had been signs. So many signs I had chosen to ignore. I remembered when Richard was 18 and wanted to study accounting at a private university. "It's the only way to get ahead, Mom," he had told me, with those dream-filled eyes I knew so well. The tuition cost what I made in 6 months at the mill, but I didn't hesitate for a second. I took out a loan that took me 5 years to pay off, working double shifts until my hands were covered in calluses and my back ached every morning. During those years, I had black coffee and a cheap donut for breakfast. He had bacon and eggs before heading to class. I wore the same clothes for years, mending the holes and washing by hand to make them last. He always had new clothes, decent shoes, because he needs to look sharp to get a good job, I told myself while I counted out coins for the bus. When he graduated, he threw a party. We rented the community hall, I hired a DJ, and ordered a huge cake with his name on it. I spent 2 months' salary on that celebration, but seeing him happy seemed worth every sacrifice. That night, watching him dance with his university friends, I thought, this is what it means to be a mother. This is love. How foolish I was. Because a month after graduating, Richard told me he'd landed a job at a major firm, but he needed to look successful to get promoted quickly. He asked me for money for a down payment on a new car. "It's an investment, Mom. The more successful I look, the more I'll earn, and the faster I can pay you back for everything." I gave him my savings. Every last dollar I had stashed in a coffee can under my bed. It was $15,000 I had saved up, penny by penny, thinking that one day I might take a vacation or fix the leaky roof. Richard never paid me back. And when I asked him about it, months later, he said, "Oh, Mom, are you seriously going to charge me? After everything you plan on leaving me in the inheritance, you're worried about a few $1,000s?" With Laura, it was different, but just as cruel. She was my only daughter, my princess, and I wanted to give her everything I never had. When she turned 16, I threw a party that the whole neighborhood talked about for months. An imported dress, a live band, the ballroom at the local country club, a professional photographer. I went into debt for 2 years to pay for that party, but seeing her smile that night made me believe it was all worth it. Years later, when she married Mark, that developer who always spoke to me with condescension, as if I were a maid in my own house, the wedding was even more expensive. Laura wanted everything perfect: a designer gown, the ceremony at St. Michael's in Old Town, the reception in a ballroom at the Drake Hotel. "I'm only getting married once, Mom. I want it to be special." I took out a second mortgage on the house to pay for that wedding. Yes, I mortgaged my only asset for the whims of a daughter who now told me I'd already had my turn. And during the first years of their marriage, when Mark was starting his business and things were tight, who do you think supported them? Every month, religiously, I gave them $500 for their expenses. It's just temporary, Mom. As soon as the business takes off, we'll pay you back with interest. The business took off. Mark got rich. They bought a house in a gated community, drove luxury SUVs, wore designer clothes. But my $500 a month never came back. Because according to Laura, your money is family money, Mom. You can't charge us as if we were strangers. Kevin, my baby, was perhaps the one who hurt me the most. When he decided to study law, the house was still mortgaged from Laura's wedding, but I found a way. I sold my mother's jewelry, the only things of value I had. A pair of gold earrings with pearls that had belonged to my grandmother, a ring with a small but beautiful diamond that had been my mom's engagement ring, and a gold chain I had received when I was born. Every time I went to the pawn shop with another piece, I felt like I was losing a part of my history, my identity. But Kevin needed books. He needed to look presentable for class. He needed a computer for his assignments. He lived with me throughout his degree. And I, who worked from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, would come home to cook for him, do his laundry, iron his shirts. He would study in his room while I did all the housework, because he needs to concentrate. He's the future lawyer of the family. When he graduated and opened his own practice, I loaned him another $20,000 for furniture, the first year's rent, and initial expenses. I swear to God I'll pay you back every penny, Mom. You've been my salvation, my angel. Without you, I'd be nothing. That promise also vanished like smoke. And when I asked him about my money, he said the exact same thing as his siblings. Mom, that money is for the family. Besides, everything I have will one day go to my kids, your grandchildren. Doesn't it make you happy to know you're investing in your family's future? Sitting in my living room that dawn, with the bitter taste of cold coffee in my mouth, I started doing the math. In 30 years, I had given them over $250,000. $250,000 that came from my suffering, from my sleepless nights working double shifts, from my meals of beans and toast while they ate steak. $250,000 they never paid back, but which they now claimed as if it were their birthright. And it wasn't just money. It was years of my life. When Richard split from his first wife, who took care of his 3 kids for 6 months while he found himself, I did. Waking up at 5 in the morning to make them breakfast, taking them to school, helping with homework, sleeping on the floor in the living room so they could have the beds. When Laura had postpartum depression after her second child was born, who moved into her house for 3 months to care for the baby and the toddler? I did. Without charging a dime, canceling my own plans, my own life, to be the perfect grandmother she needed. When Kevin had that car accident and was in the hospital for 3 weeks, who slept in a chair by his side every night, feeding him with a spoon, helping him walk when he could barely stand? I did. Always me. Helen Miller, the invisible woman who appeared when she was needed and disappeared when she was no longer useful. But what hurt the most wasn't the money or the lost time. It was the way they talked to me now. As if I were a burden. As if my years of sacrifice had turned them into creditors instead of children. You've already had your turn, Laura had said. As if at 64 my life was over. As if I no longer deserved respect, dignity, love. It's time for someone more responsible to make the decisions, Richard had said. As if having worked my whole life, raised 3 successful professionals, and kept my house immaculate for 40 years, was evidence of irresponsibility. I got up from the sofa and walked to the mirror in the entryway. The woman looking back at me had gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes, age spots on her hands. But her eyes still had fire. You know what, Helen? I said aloud, feeling the words rise from my soul. Your children are right about one thing. It is time for someone more responsible to make the decisions. And that someone was going to be me. For the first time in 30 years, I was going to make a decision just for myself, a decision my darling children would never see coming, because what they didn't know is that their mother had learned to be invisible. And invisible women can do incredible things without anyone noticing, until it's too late. The days following the meeting were a slow, creeping torture. It was as if my children had flipped an invisible switch that gave them permission to treat me like what they thought I was, a burden with an expiration date. The first blow came 2 days later. It was Thursday morning, and I was watering the plants in my garden when my phone rang. It was the voice of Sophia, my 12-year-old granddaughter, Richard's eldest. "Grandma, is it true you're going to live in a nursing home?" Her voice sounded confused, scared. My blood ran cold. How could they have already told a child that? "Who told you that, sweetie?" "Dad did. He said you can't live alone anymore. That it's dangerous for you. And that the home will be better because nurses will take care of you there. But I don't want you to go, Grandma. Aren't we going to make cookies together on Sundays anymore?" My hand trembled so much I almost dropped the phone. Richard had lied to his own daughter. He had told her I was going willingly, that it was for my own good. And worse, he had already started preparing her for my absence. "Honey, nobody is going anywhere. Grandma is going to stay right here in her house, waiting for you every Sunday to make cookies, okay?" But when I hung up, the tears wouldn't stop. My own grandchildren were already being programmed to forget me. That same afternoon, Laura showed up at my house unannounced. She blew in like a storm, with that fake energy she used when she wanted something. "Hi, Mom. I came to help you organize your things. You know, just in case you decide to move soon." "I'm not moving, Laura." She laughed, a sound that chilled my blood as she opened my dresser drawers without asking. "Oh, Mom, don't be stubborn. Look at all this stuff," she said, holding up a blouse I'd bought last year. "What do you need so many clothes for? At the facility, they'll give you comfortable uniforms. You won't need all this." I watched her rummage through my drawers as if she were a stranger ransacking an abandoned house. She touched my dresses, my scarves, my family photos, as if she were taking inventory for a garage sale. "Laura, leave my things alone." "Don't get mad, Mom. I'm just trying to help. Look, this china from Grandma is so beautiful," she said, picking up one of the plates. "I could take it, to keep it safe. Anyway, where you're going, they won't let you have glass plates. It's dangerous for people your age, people my age, as if I were a different species of human. That china isn't going anywhere, Laura. It's mine." Okay, don't get worked up. It's bad for your blood pressure," she said, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "We'll talk later, when you're calmer." She left, taking one of my ceramic pots with her. "To look after it while you decide what to do with everything." I said nothing. I was too stunned to fight. But the worst came the next day. Friday afternoon, I was watching my soap opera when Kevin appeared with a woman I didn't know. A woman dressed like a doctor, with a clipboard full of papers. "Hi, Mom. I brought you a surprise. This is Dr. Hernandez. She's a gerontologist, a specialist in senior care." "And why would I need a specialist in senior care?" Dr. Hernandez gave me a professional smile that made me feel like an animal at the zoo. "Mrs. Miller, your son asked me to come and do a routine evaluation, just to make sure you're doing well, that you can live independently without any risks." "I'm perfectly fine." "Of course, ma'am. But at your age, it's advisable to do these kinds of checkups. May I ask you a few questions?" It wasn't a question. It was an order disguised as courtesy. Kevin watched me with the expression I knew from his childhood, the one he made when he'd done something wrong and hoped I wouldn't notice. For the next hour, the doctor asked me questions that seemed designed to make me look bad. Did I remember what I had for breakfast? Did I know what day it was? Could I walk in a straight line? Had I had any falls recently? Every question felt like a trap. Kevin took notes on his phone, as if gathering evidence for a trial. "Your mother is in excellent physical and mental condition," the doctor finally told Kevin, as if I weren't in the room. "I see no medical reason why she cannot live independently." I saw the disappointment cloud Kevin's face. He had hoped the doctor would say something else. "But doctor, don't you think it would be safer for her to be in a place where she could be monitored?" "Not at this time. Your mother is perfectly capable of making her own decisions." When they left, Kevin didn't kiss me goodbye. He just said, "We'll talk later," and walked out with that frustrated look I knew so well. That night, as I was trying to fall asleep, the phone rang. It was Richard, but his voice sounded strange, friendly, too friendly. "How are you, Mom? Have you had dinner?" "Yes, Richard. Do you need something?" No, just wanted to chat." "Hey, do you remember Mrs. Henderson, your neighbor from across the street?" "Of course I remember her." "Well, I ran into her son at the bank. He told me she moved into a beautiful facility in Evanston. says she's thrilled, has friends her own age. They do activities. They take great care of her. And the best part is she doesn't have to worry about a thing. Not the house, not the bills, not being lonely. There it was. The poison wrapped in gift paper. That's nice for Mrs. Henderson. Yeah, right? And it got me thinking, Mom. Wouldn't it be nice for you to have friends your own age? You barely know anyone in the neighborhood anymore. All the neighbors you knew have passed away or moved. It was a lie. I knew all my neighbors. Mr. Peterson from the corner store, Mrs. Rosario who sold tamales on weekends, the young couple in the blue house who always greeted me warmly. Richard, I'm very happy here. Yeah, I know. But just think about it. In those places, there are doctors on call 24/7. If something were to happen to you, God forbid, someone would be there to help immediately. Here, you're all alone. If you fall, if you have a heart attack, no one would know until it's too late. He was planting fear in me, fear of being alone, fear of getting sick, fear of dying without anyone noticing. I also thought, he continued, that if you sell the house, with that money you could live like a queen in a residence. No worries, no working, no cleaning or cooking. Wouldn't that be wonderful at your age? At my age. That damned phrase again. Good night, Richard. Going to bed already? Okay, Mom. Just think about it, will you? We're doing this for your own good, because we love you so much. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. It was the second time in a week they had used the word love to describe plans that would destroy my life. But what hurt the most wasn't Richard's lies, or Laura's plundering, or Kevin's medical evaluation. What broke my soul into 1,000 pieces was realizing that they had been seeing my life as an obstacle to their plans for months, maybe years. I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen. There, stuck to the refrigerator with a sunflower-shaped magnet, was my calendar. A calendar full of dates circled in red. Richard's birthday in March, which had passed without a call from me. Laura's wedding anniversary in April, to which I hadn't been invited. Kevin's eldest son's graduation in May, which I found out about on Facebook. Important dates in their lives where I no longer had a place. I poured a cup of chamomile tea and sat at the table where I had eaten breakfast alone for the last 6 months. Because that was the truth. I was alone. It had been months since any of my children had visited without wanting something. Months since I had received a call just to ask how I was. It had been so gradual that I hadn't noticed. First, the visits became less frequent. Then the calls got shorter. Then the excuses. We're so busy, Mom. The kids have so many activities. Work is killing me. And I, like the fool I had been my whole life, had accepted every excuse, every slight, every lack of respect, telling myself it was normal, that this was modern family life, that I couldn't demand their attention. But now I understood the truth. It hadn't been gradual. It had been calculated. They had been isolating me, little by little, so that when this moment came, I would have no strength to resist. That dawn, sitting in my kitchen, I made the first rebellious decision of my adult life. The next day, I was going to the bank. Not to sell my house, not to check myself into a home, but to find out exactly how much everything I had built was worth, and to start planning what my darling children would never see coming, because Helen Miller had been asleep for far too long, but the monsters she had created had just woken her up, and a betrayed mother is the most dangerous thing in this world. On Monday morning, I walked into the Chase Bank on Michigan Avenue with a determination I hadn't felt in years. I carried my black leather purse, the same one I'd used for my children's parent-teacher conferences, and all my documents organized in a yellow folder. I had worn my best dress, the navy blue one I saved for special occasions, because I knew that in America, how you present yourself determines how you're treated. The bank officer, Ms. Fernandez, a young woman in her 30s with perfectly coiffed hair and a fresh manicure, greeted me with the professional smile they practice in customer service training. Good morning, Mrs. Miller. How can I help you? I want to know the current market value of my property, and I need to review all my bank statements from the last 2 years. While she typed on her computer, I looked out the window at the street. City buses rumbled by, business people hurried along with their briefcases, the L train clattered on the tracks above. The normal, routine life of people who didn't know their world could collapse at any moment. Mrs. Miller, according to the most recent appraisal, your property in Lincoln Park has a market value of $950,000. THEWORDSHITMELIKEASLAP. ALMOSTAMILLIONDOLLARSE. IKNEWMYHOUSEHADINCREASEIEASEOFTHAGBORAGODIBUTIHADINEIGHTDAS. $950,000. The words hit me like a slap. Almost $1 million. I knew my house had increased in value because of the neighborhood, but had no idea it was that much. $950,000? Yes, ma'am, it's a very desirable area now. Here are your statements. I took the papers with trembling hands. Page after page of transactions that I didn't understand at first. But as I read them, my stomach twisted into a knot of nausea. There were withdrawals I didn't remember authorizing. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Strange activity over the last few months, right after I had given my 3 children access to my account to help me with the bills when I can't get to the bank. Ma'am, can you explain these transfers? I showed her a line that read, Online transfer, $2,500, account ending in 7734. She checked her screen and frowned. This transfer was authorized via online banking with your username and password, Mrs. Miller. Don't you recall? I don't know how to use online banking. My children help me with that when needed. An uncomfortable silence filled the small office. The officer looked at me with that expression professionals use when they know they're witnessing something they shouldn't be seeing. Ma'am, who else has access to your account? My 3 children. I gave them access a few months ago because they said it would be easier to help me with my expenses. We kept looking. In the last 6 months, they had taken over $18,000 from my account. Small amounts that I wouldn't miss immediately, but which added up to a fortune for someone like me. And what are these payments for? I asked, pointing to monthly transfers of $800 that appeared as bill pay. Let me check. These are payments to Nordstrom. Given the amount and regularity, they look like payments for a store credit card. A credit card I didn't have. A credit card someone else was using with my money. Ma'am, I need you to print all of these transactions from the last 12 months, and I want to immediately revoke access for anyone other than myself to this account. Of course, Mrs. Miller. But I need you to understand this might complicate things with the people who have been helping you with your finances. Those people are stealing from me. The words came out of my mouth with a clarity that surprised me. Stealing. My own children were stealing from me. I left the bank with a folder full of papers that proved the greatest betrayal of my life. Almost $20,000 stolen in 6 months. And who knows how much more over the previous years, when I didn't check my statements because I blindly trusted Richard to take care of everything. The bus ride home felt endless. Every red light, every stop, every minute gave me more time to process the magnitude of what I had just discovered. This wasn't just family disagreements. It wasn't just ingratitude. It was systematic, planned theft, executed by the 3 people I trusted most in the world. I got home at 2 in the afternoon. I poured myself a glass of water because my mouth was as dry as paper, and I sat at the dining room table to review every page, every transaction, every date. January 15th, a transfer of $1,500. The day Richard had told me he needed temporary help with the kids' expenses because he'd had unexpected costs. February 28th, $1,200. The day after Laura came to visit and asked me to lend her money for a spa treatment. She needed to feel better. March 10th, $2,000. A week after Kevin told me he was having trouble with his office rent and that if he didn't pay, he'd lose all his clients. Every theft came with a lie. Every lie was wrapped in emotional manipulation. It's just a loan, Mom. We'll pay you back soon. It's an emergency. And I, like the world's biggest fool, had believed every word. But what hurt the most wasn't the money. It was realizing that every time they had come to visit me in recent months, it wasn't out of love. It was business. Every hug had been calculated. Every, "We love you, Mom," had been part of the strategy. I remembered the time Laura had been so affectionate, giving me a foot rub, making me chamomile tea, and I had thought, My daughter loves me so much. That same night, she had transferred $1,800 from my account. I remembered when Kevin had stayed for dinner, we'd watched a movie together like old times, and I had gone to bed feeling like the luckiest mother in the world. The next day, $2,200 had vanished from my account. Every moment of happiness had been a farce. Every gesture of love had been an act to steal from me more efficiently. I got up from the table and went to the bathroom. I needed to see myself in the mirror, to recognize myself. But the woman looking back was a stranger. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her cheeks were hollow. An expression of shock I had never seen on my own face. I went back to the kitchen and dialed Richard's number. I needed to hear his voice lying one more time to confirm what I already knew. "Mom? You okay? It's weird for you to call at this time. Richard, I need to ask you something. Have you been taking money from my account?" A silence. A silence so long I could hear my own heart beating. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "I have the bank statements here. Withdrawals I didn't make. Transfers I didn't authorize. Was it you?" "Mom, you told me I could use your account when I needed help with the kids' expenses. You gave me your password. I'm not stealing from you." "Is 18,000,INSIXMONTHSAKIDSAEXPENSES 18,000 in 6 months kids' expenses? 18,000. You're exaggerating, Mom. And besides, that money is staying in the family. Everything I have will go to my kids, your grandkids. It's not like I'm giving it to strangers. Richard, it's my money. My money that I earned working. Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. You barely spend anything anymore. You live alone, you eat little, you don't travel. What do you need so much money sitting in the bank for? At least we're using it for productive things." I hung up without saying goodbye. I couldn't listen to those justifications anymore. I called Laura. The phone rang several times before she answered. "Mom? Did something happen?" "Yes. Something happened. I found out you're stealing from me." "Stealing? What are you talking about? I've never stolen anything from you. The monthly payments to Nordstrom. The transfers to your account. It's all here, in the papers from the bank." "Mom, that's not stealing. You told me I could use your card when I needed something for the house or the kids. And besides, I thought we had already agreed that we would share family expenses." "When did we agree to that, Laura?" "Well, a while ago. I don't remember exactly when, but you said you wanted to help us more. And I thought that included these expenses. Is $7,000 in 6 months expenses for the kids?" "Don't yell, Mom. You're scaring me. Besides, it's not $7,000. You're exaggerating as always." "I have the statements right in front of me, Laura." "Well, yes, but, Mom, you know Mark and I are going through a tough time financially. And you have money you're not using. I thought you wouldn't mind helping us. We're your family." I hung up without another word. I couldn't take any more. I called Kevin, my baby, my last child, hoping he would be different, hoping he would tell me it was all a misunderstanding. "Mom, good thing you called. I was just thinking about you. Kevin, I need you to come to my house right now. We need to talk." "Are you okay? You sound weird." "Just come, please." "Okay, Mom, I'm on my way." While I waited, I made a strong coffee and sat in the living room with all the bank papers spread out on the coffee table. Each page was a stab wound, each number a documented betrayal. When Kevin arrived an hour later, he found me sitting in my favorite armchair, my eyes dry but my gaze lost. "Mom? What happened?" I showed him the papers without saying a word. I saw him turn pale as he read, as he realized he'd been caught. "Mom, I can explain. Explain how $4,700 in 4 months are office expenses. Mom, I really needed that money. My practice is just starting and so you steal from me?" "I'm not stealing from you," he shouted, and for the first time in my life, I saw my youngest son yell at me. "That money is going to be mine anyway when you die. What's the difference if you give it to me now or later?" His words fell on me like a shower of knives. "When you die." My own son, my baby, was waiting for my death to justify robbing me while I was alive. "Kevin," I whispered. "Sorry, Mom. I didn't mean that, but I'm just sick of these dramas. We're your children. Everything you have will eventually be ours. What's the problem if we use a little of it early?" I remained silent, not because I had no words, but because I finally understood that it didn't matter what I said. To my 3 children, I was already dead. They had already divided my inheritance in their minds, and they were just waiting for the right moment to make it official. That night, after Kevin left, slamming the door behind him, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea that I could no longer drink because of the lump in my throat. I looked at the old red rotary phone on the wall, the phone that had witnessed so many loving conversations with my children, and I knew it would never ring again with a voice that truly loved me. That was the night Helen Miller died, and the night someone completely different was born, someone who no longer had anything to lose, and that, my darling children, made her the most dangerous person they had ever known. On Tuesday morning, I woke up different. It wasn't that I'd slept well. In fact, I'd barely closed my eyes, but something fundamental had shifted inside me during those sleepless hours. It was as if the previous night's pain had burned away everything that was left of the submissive woman I had been for 64 years. I got up at 6, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I made coffee in my old enamelware pot, the one Laura had always criticized for looking so dated, and sat at my kitchen table with a notebook I hadn't used in years. On the first page, I wrote, Helen Miller, The Freedom Plan. I divided the second page into 3 columns, Richard, Laura, Kevin. And under each name, I began to list everything they owed me, not just money, everything. Richard owed me the $15,000 I'd lent him for his car, plus the student loans I paid off, plus the 6 months I cared for his children when he separated. I calculated $2,000 a month for the unpaid nanny work, plus all the Sunday dinners I cooked for them for 10 years, another $5,000 in groceries and utilities, plus the $3,000 loan for his condo down payment that he forgot to pay back. Laura owed me the $20,000 for her wedding, plus the $6,000 for her Sweet 16 party, plus the $500 $500 $500 a month I give them when Mark was starting out, $12,000 in total, plus the 3 months I practically lived at her house taking care of her baby during her postpartum depression, another $4,500 of unpaid labor. Kevin owed me the $5,000 from my mother's jewelry I sold for his tuition, plus the $20,000 loan for his office, plus all the years he lived with me rent-free while he was in school. I estimated $15,000, plus the 3 weeks I slept in the hospital when he had his accident, lost wages and expenses, $2,000. The grand total took my breath away, over $100,000. Over $100,000 my children owed me, just counting what I could document and calculating conservatively. I closed the notebook and made a decision that would change everything. That very day, I was going to start collecting. I wasn't going to ask their permission. I wasn't going to explain my reasons. I was simply going to act. At 9 o'clock sharp, I called Richard at his office. Good morning, Mom. Everything okay? Richard, I need you to come to the house this afternoon. I have something important to discuss with you. Are you sick? You sound strange. I'm not sick. Just be here at 5. Alone. Without Monica. Without the kids. Well, okay. I think I can. What's this about? You'll find out when you get here. Next, I called Laura. Hi, Mom. How's your morning? Laura, I need to see you today, at 6:30, at the house. Today? Oh, Mom, I have my yoga class and then a salon appointment. Cancel them. This is important. But, Mom, Laura, if you don't come today, don't bother contacting me ever again. Do you understand? A silence on the other end. I had never spoken to her like that. Okay, I'll be there. Finally, I dialed Kevin. Mom, don't tell me you're still mad about yesterday. Kevin, you will be at the house at 8 o'clock tonight, without fail. Mom, I have an important client meeting. You decide what's more important. But this is your only chance to come willingly. Willingly? Are you threatening me? I'll see you at 8. And I hung up. For the first time in my life, I had hung up on one of my children. I spent the rest of the day preparing. Not physically. I wasn't going to cook or clean or arrange anything special for them. I prepared myself mentally. I took a slow shower, put on my favorite black dress, the one that made me look slimmer and more elegant. I put on makeup for the first time in months. Not to look pretty, but to look powerful. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun that gave me an air of authority. At 3, I went to the FedEx store down the street and made copies of all the bank statements, all the receipts I had saved, all the photos of the checks I had given them over the years. Every paper was a piece of evidence, every document a weapon. When I got back home, I rearranged the living room. I removed the coffee table where we always put out snacks and drinks for guests. In its place, I put a taller, more formal table, like one a lawyer would use. On it, I arranged the papers in 3 perfect piles, one for each child. At 5 o'clock on the dot, the doorbell rang. Richard walked in with that condescending smile he always wore, as if he were an adult visiting an old woman who needed care. "Hi, Mom. How are you? You look different." "Sit down, Richard." He sat on the sofa, but when he saw the papers on the table, his expression changed. "Richard, for 30 years I was your mother. Today I am your creditor." "My what?" I handed him a sheet I had prepared especially for him. On it, in my clearest handwriting, I had listed every dollar he owed me with dates and descriptions. "You owe me exactly $37,500. You have 30 days to pay me." He laughed. He laughed as if I'd told him a joke. "Mom, are you crazy? I don't owe you anything. Everything you gave me was because you wanted to. No one forced you." "No one forced me?" I pulled a yellowed piece of paper from my purse. "Do you recognize this?" It was a letter he had written me when he was 20, promising to pay me back every last cent of his university money, in his own handwriting, with his signature. His face went pale. "Mom, that was over 15 years ago, and you still owe me, with interest. This is ridiculous. I'm not paying you anything. You're my mother, not my bank." "You're right. I'm not your bank. Banks collect with lawyers and liens. I'm worse. I'm the woman who raised you and who can decide whether you exist in my will or not." Richard shot up from the sofa as if on a spring. "Are you threatening to disinherit me?" "I'm not threatening you. I'm billing you. You decide if you want to pay as a debtor or disappear as a son." He left, slamming the door. But before he was gone, he yelled something that confirmed I was on the right track. "You're insane! I'm going to talk to a lawyer and have you declared incompetent." At 6:30, Laura arrived. She entered more cautiously than Richard, as if sensing something had changed in the air of my house. "Mom, are you okay? Richard called me. He was very upset. He says you're acting strangely." "Sit down, Laura." She took a seat, and I saw her eyes immediately fix on the papers. "Laura, you owe me $42,500. Here's the breakdown." This time there was no laughter. Laura reviewed the sheet carefully, as if it were a medical report with bad news. "Mom, this makes no sense. You paid for the wedding because you wanted to. I never asked for it to be so expensive. The Sweet 16 was your idea. The money you gave me when Mark was starting out was because you insisted on helping us. So you don't want to pay. It's not that I don't want to. It's that I can't, Mom. I don't have $40,500. Nobody has that kind of money just lying around. You have a house in a gated community that's worth $1 million. You have a brand new SUV. You have jewelry. You have investments. Don't tell me you can't. Those things belong to Mark and me. They're our family assets. And this," I said, gesturing to my house, "is my asset. The asset I built for you to respect, not to divide up while I'm still alive." Laura started to cry, but for the first time in my life, her tears didn't move me. "Mom, I didn't know you felt this way. I thought you were happy helping us. I thought that's what mothers did. Mothers help. They don't let themselves be robbed. I'm not robbing you." "Then pay me." She left crying, but without slamming the door like Richard. She left like someone fleeing a fight they know they can't win. At 8, Kevin arrived. He walked in with that scolded child look he'd had since he was little, when he knew he'd done something wrong. "Mom, my brother and sister told me what happened. Are you seriously billing them?" "Sit down, Kevin. You have an outstanding balance, too." I handed him his sheet. $42,000. "Mom, I will pay you. But you need to give me time. My practice is just getting started and— How much time? I don't know. 2 years? 3? You have 30 days. Like your siblings." "That's impossible. Where am I going to get almost $42,000 in a month? From the same place I got it when you needed it. From work, from sacrifice, from life. Kevin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Mom, what's happening to you? Why are you acting like this? What's happening is that I woke up, Kevin. What's happening is that I realized I raised 3 strangers who believe that because they came from my body, they are entitled to everything I am and everything I have. We love you, Mom. No, you love my house, my money, and my quick, uncomplicated death so you can inherit without waiting. That's not true. Then why did you tell me yesterday that the money would be yours anyway when I died? Kevin lowered his head. He had no answer for that. 30 days, Kevin. You decide if you want to remain my son or if you'd rather just be my debtor. That night, after the last of my children had gone, I poured myself a glass of red wine I had been saving for a special occasion. This was one. It was the first night of my new life. I sat in my living room, in silence, feeling something I hadn't experienced in decades. Peace. For the first time in 30 years, no one was coming to ask me for anything. For the first time in my adult life, I had set boundaries. For the first time since I was born, I had said no. And I had meant it. Outside, the city kept moving. Buses passed, filled with workers heading home. Children played on the street until their mothers called them in for dinner. Life went on as normal for everyone. But for me, that night was the first day of the rest of my existence. The first day Helen Miller lived for herself. And tomorrow, no matter what happened, she would continue to do so. The next day, at 7 in the morning, the counterattack began. My phone rang as if it were a national emergency. It was Richard, with a voice I didn't recognize. Cold, calculating, threatening. Mom, I spoke with my attorney. He says what you're doing is called extortion, that you could go to jail for threatening your family with disinheritance. Good morning, Richard. Did you have a nice breakfast? Don't play games with me, Mom. This isn't a game. You cancel this whole insane fantasy about these supposed debts, or I swear to you, by Friday you'll be committed. Committed? Yes. The same lawyer says that a woman your age who suddenly has such a radical change in behavior, who starts seeing enemies where there are none, who attacks her own family, is clearly suffering from dementia or some kind of mental disorder. I sat up in bed, still in my pajamas, feeling my heart race. But not with fear, with rage. Richard, your lawyer can say whatever he wants, but I have something better than lawyers. I have paperwork, documents, proof of every dollar you owe me. And something more important, I have a will that I can change as many times as I please. Mom, you are getting yourself into serious trouble. We are your legal heirs. We have rights. You have the rights I decide to give you. And right now, you have the right to pay me what you owe me. I hung up, but I knew this was just the beginning. At 9:30, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Laura and Monica, Richard's wife. They were both dressed in black, as if attending a funeral. In a way, they were. "Hello, Helen," Monica said in that sweet voice that had always struck me as false. "Laura told me what's happening and we're very worried about you." "Come in," I said, because I needed to hear what strategy they had planned. They sat in the living room, and Monica took my hand in hers. Soft hands that had never worked in a mill, never washed other people's clothes, never known the pain of supporting a family alone. "Helen, we love you so much. The children adore you. Sophia was asking why Grandpa Richard was so sad yesterday, why he didn't want to play with her. There it was. Emotional manipulation, using my grandchildren as hostages. And I love Sophia very much. That's why I need her father to pay me what he owes, to ensure that she has a grandmother with dignity, not a beggar who lets her own family rob her blind." Laura leaned forward, with tears in her eyes that no longer moved me. "Mom, this isn't you. You've never been a mercenary woman. You've never been materialistic. What's happening to you? What's happening is that I'm getting to know myself for the first time at 64, Laura. What's happening is I discovered that for my entire life I was so foolish that I confused being generous with being a goddamn fool." Monica flinched when she heard me say goddamn fool. She had never heard me speak like that. "Helen, please don't talk that way. The children could hear you." "The children aren't here, Monica. And even if they were, It's about time they learned that their grandmother isn't a walking ATM. Laura began to cry harder, with those theatrical sobs she had perfected since childhood to get her way. Mom, we never saw you as an ATM. We see you as our mother, as the woman we love most in the world. Really? Because you don't steal $18,000 in 6 months from the woman you love most in the world. You don't threaten to put her in a home to steal her house. You don't have her evaluated by doctors to declare her incompetent. Monica and Laura looked at each other. They knew I had caught them in all their schemes. Mom, Laura said, in a voice trying to sound reasonable, we never wanted to hurt you. We were just worried about your well-being. My financial well-being, you mean. They fell silent. Outside, I could hear Mr. Peterson opening his store, the familiar rattle of the metal security gate marking the start of another day in the neighborhood. The normal life of normal people who didn't have to deal with children who saw them as obstacles to their prosperity. Monica switched tactics. She stood up and began to walk around the living room, touching my things as if she were an appraiser. Helen, this house is lovely, but it's very large for one person, and it must be a lot of work to maintain. Haven't you thought that maybe it would be more comfortable for you to live in a smaller place, something easier to manage? Like a nursing home, for example. Well, not necessarily a nursing home, but there are some very nice assisted living communities, very comfortable. And with the money from the sale of this house, you could live very peacefully, without any worries. And you would all keep the difference? Well, we're family. Whatever was left over would be for the grandchildren, for their education, for their future. There it was again. My future didn't matter. Only the future of everyone else, built on the ruins of my dignity. Monica, Laura, I want you to leave my house. Now. Mom, don't kick us out. We came to talk to you, to find a solution. I already gave you the solution yesterday. 30 days to pay me. Whoever pays remains my child. Whoever doesn't becomes a stranger who once came from my body. They left, whispering to each other, making plans I could no longer hear but could well imagine. At 2 p.m, the second wave arrived. This time it was Kevin, but he wasn't alone. He brought Mark, Laura's husband. 2 men, 2 lawyers, coming to intimidate a 64-year-old woman. If it hadn't been so pathetic, it would have been funny. Helen, Mark said with that deep voice he used when he wanted to impress someone. Kevin told me about the situation, and it seems to me there's a major misunderstanding here. There's no misunderstanding, Mark. There is a very clear debt that needs to be paid. Helen, from a legal standpoint, what you're calling debts were gifts, voluntary donations. There is no legal document that obligates them to repay you that money. Oh, really? I pulled Richard's old letter from my purse, the one promising to pay back his university money. What's this? Mark took the letter, read it, and I saw his confident expression crumble. This is very old. More than 15 years have passed. Any debt would be past the statute of limitations. Don't play me for a fool, Mark. You're a lawyer. You know that personal loans between family members aren't always so clear-cut. And more importantly, I'm not asking for a court order. I'm asking for basic human decency. Kevin intervened with that good little boy voice he had used his whole life to manipulate me. Mom, Mark is right. Legally, we don't owe you anything. Everything you gave us was because you wanted to give it. And morally, Kevin, do you owe me nothing morally? Mom, morality doesn't pay the bills. The phrase hit me like a slap. My own son, the one who had slept in my bed until he was 8 because he was afraid of the dark, was telling me that morality didn't matter. You're right, Kevin. Morality doesn't pay the bills. That's why from now on we're going to handle everything legally. Mark, since you love the law so much, let me explain a very simple one to you. In the state of Illinois, a person can dispose of their assets however they see fit. They can disinherit their children, donate everything to charity, they can do whatever they want with their property. Mark paled. Helen, don't be impulsive. I'm not being impulsive. I'm being smart. You all just taught me that in this family. Only the legal matters, not the moral. Fine. Then legally, as of this moment, you do not exist in my will. You can't do that, Kevin shouted. Oh, I can. And I already have. Yesterday afternoon, I went to my attorney and changed my will. This house, my savings, everything I own, will be donated to the Foundation for Elder Women in Need. It was a lie. I hadn't changed the will yet, but I wanted to see their reactions. Kevin shot up like a jack-in-the-box. "You're insane! This house is worth almost $1 million. You can't just give it to strangers." "Strangers? You are the strangers. Those old women at the foundation will treat me with more respect and love than I've received from my own children in years." Mark tried to regain control. "Helen, you are making very important decisions under emotional distress. That's not advisable. Why don't we all think about this more calmly?" "Mark, I've had 64 years to think about it. I don't need any more time." They left, but before he walked out, Kevin said something that confirmed everything I suspected. "Mom, this isn't over. We have rights, and we're going to fight for them." That night, as I ate a simple grilled cheese and tomato soup for dinner, a simple meal no one was there to criticize for being not nutritious enough or too plain, the phone rang. It was a voice I didn't know. "Mrs. Helen Miller?" "Yes, who is this?" "This is Dr. Ramirez, a psychiatrist with Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Your children asked me to call you because they're concerned about some recent changes in your behavior." There it was. The next step in their plan. A psychiatrist willing to declare me crazy without ever having met me. "Doctor, my children are concerned because I stopped being their slave. Is that a symptom of insanity?" "Ma'am, I'd like to schedule an appointment with you to talk, just to rule out." "Doctor, let me rule something out for you. If you accept money from my children to have me declared incompetent, I will sue you for fraud and medical malpractice, and I have the resources to do it." I hung up. That night, before going to bed, I wrote a new list in my notebook, not of what they owed me, but of what I owed myself. I owe myself respect. I owe myself dignity. I owe myself a peaceful old age. I owe myself the right to be happy without asking for permission. I owe myself the freedom to say no without feeling guilty. And at the bottom, in large letters, I wrote, "Helen Miller is no longer for sale." Tomorrow, I was going to see my attorney for real. Tomorrow, I would make the threat that was once a performance into a reality, because my children had chosen war, and I had just discovered that I had inherited something from my mother besides the house and the jewelry. I had inherited her courage, and the courage of a 64-year-old woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous thing in this world. On Friday morning, I left the house with a folder under my arm and the determination of a woman who had decided to take her life back. My appointment with Mr. Herrera, my trusted attorney for the last 15 years, was scheduled for 10 o'clock. But I had a stop to make first. I went by the local florist and bought a bouquet of white gladioli. Then I drove to the cemetery where my mother was laid to rest. I sat on the small stone bench in front of her grave and placed the flowers in the metal vase I had installed myself years ago. "Mom," I said softly, because I had always spoken to her grave as if she could hear me. "I think it took me too long to learn the lessons you taught me, but I've learned them now. Today I'm going to do something that scares me, but I know you would approve." The wind rustled the flowers and I took it as a sign she was listening. An hour later, I was in Mr. Herrera's office, an older gentleman who had handled every important document in my life: the deed to the house, the original will, the divorce papers that were never finalized because my husband disappeared before he could sign them. "Helen, it's so good to see you. How can I help?" "I want to change my will. Completely." He listened without interrupting as I explained everything that had happened. Every theft, every lie, every threat. When I finished, he took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly, the way he did when he was processing something very serious. "Helen, what you're describing is very grave. Are you absolutely certain you want to make these decisions?" "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." "Very well. Then we will draft the new will. But I want you to understand that once it's signed, your children will have very few legal options to contest it." Perfect. We spent 2 hours drafting the most important document of my life. My house would be donated to the Foundation for Senior Women in Need. My savings would be divided among 3 organizations that helped working single mothers. My few remaining pieces of jewelry would go to my neighbor Isabel, who had been more of a family to me in recent years than my own children. For Richard, Laura, and Kevin, I left exactly $1 each, enough so they couldn't claim I had forgotten them by mistake, but not enough to buy even a pack of gum. Mr. Herrera, I want this will to be kept confidential until my death, but I want you to prepare 3 certified copies that I will deliver personally. To your children? Yes. I want them to know exactly what they lost and why they lost it. I left the law office at 2 in the afternoon, feeling an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. On the bus ride home, I dialed a number I had saved in my phone for months, but had never dared to use. Hello? Sophia? It's Helen Miller. Mrs. Miller, it's so good to hear from you. How are you? Sophia was like a granddaughter to me, but not by blood. She was the daughter of my neighbor Isabel, a 28-year-old woman studying social work at UIC. She had grown up seeing me as a surrogate grandmother, and I had watched her grow from a mischievous girl who climbed the trees on our street. Sophia, I was wondering if you could come over to my house this evening. I need to ask you a very special favor. Of course, Mrs. Miller. Are you all right? I'm better than I've ever been, my dear. I'll see you at 6. I got home and prepared everything as if for a stage play. I cleaned the living room until it shone, set the dining room table with my best tablecloth, the embroidered one my mother had made by hand when she got married. I took out the good china that Laura had wanted to take, and I brewed coffee in my old enamelware pot. At 6, Sophia arrived, punctual as always, with a smile that had never needed to ask for anything to brighten my day. Mrs. Miller, you look so elegant. Is this a special occasion? Yes, my dear. Today is the day I close a very painful chapter of my life and begin a new one. I explained everything to her. Every detail, every betrayal, every lie. Sophia listened with tears in her eyes, squeezing my hand during the most difficult parts. Mrs. Miller, I can't believe your own children would do that to you. That's why I asked you to come, dear, because I need a witness for what's going to happen tonight. I need someone who truly cares about me to be present when I close this door forever. At 7 o'clock sharp, I dialed Richard. Mom? You sound strange. Are you sick? Richard, I want you to come to the house. You, Laura, and Kevin. All together, at 8 o'clock sharp. What for? To receive a gift from me. Something you've been waiting for a very long time. A gift? What are you talking about? You'll understand when you get here. And Richard, come prepared to receive exactly what you deserve. At 8 o'clock, the 3 of them were standing in my living room. Richard with a look of annoyance, Laura with eyes swollen from crying over the past few days, Kevin with that calculating expression he'd developed since becoming a lawyer. Sophia sat in the armchair in the corner, a notebook in her hands to take notes of everything that was said. Who is she? Richard asked, pointing at Sophia. She is my witness, and you'll soon understand why I need one. I took 3 envelopes from the dining room table, thick, sealed envelopes, with the attorney's official seal clearly visible. For the past few days you have threatened me, lied to me, blackmailed me, and shown me that to you, I am not a mother. I am an obstacle between you and what you believe you are entitled to. Mom, what are you talking about? Laura said, her voice trembling. I'm talking about this. I showed them the envelopes. I'm talking about my new will, which I just signed this morning. All 3 of them were speechless. Richard was the first to react. What does that will say? It says that I officially acknowledge what you've already told me, that I've had my turn, that I don't need anything anymore, that my function as a mother is over. I handed them the envelopes one by one, as if they were graduation diplomas. Richard, for you, who told me the money would be yours anyway when I died. $1. So you know exactly what you're worth as a son. Richard tore open the envelope with trembling hands. I watched his face go from white to red as he read each line. This can't be legal, he shouted. It's completely legal. Ask your lawyer friend. Laura, for you, who told me it was time for me to go to a home so you could make better use of my house. $1. So you can buy everything your materialistic heart desires. Laura didn't even open her envelope. She collapsed onto the sofa and began to cry like a child. Mom, you can't do this to us. We're your family. My family doesn't steal from me. My family doesn't threaten me. My family doesn't plot to put me in a mental institution to steal my house. Kevin, for you, who told me that morality doesn't pay the bills. $1. So you can learn that a lack of morality doesn't pay an inheritance either. Kevin read his entire document before speaking. When he looked up, his eyes held a coldness I had never seen before. Where is everything else going? To people who actually know what it means to love without expecting anything in return. To organizations that help mothers like me, who sacrifice their entire lives for ungrateful children. Richard stood up like a caged animal. This is madness! You can't give our inheritance to strangers. Your inheritance, I shouted for the first time in my life, with a voice I didn't recognize as my own. Your inheritance. There's the problem. You never understood that this house, this money, this life, are mine. I earned them. I built them, and I decide what to do with them. You're our mother, Laura cried. You have obligations to us. My obligations ended when you became adults, when you got married, had children, and built your own lives. My obligation was not to be your slave until the day I died. Kevin, always the most calculating, switched tactics. Mom, we can still fix this. We can pay you what you're asking. We can find a way. Oh, now you can? What a coincidence. When you thought you were going to inherit everything anyway, you couldn't. Now that you know you're inheriting $1 each, suddenly you can. Mom, please, Laura begged. We're your children. We made mistakes, but we're your blood. My blood, I said, and I felt the words rise from my soul. My blood is in these hands that worked until they bled to give you everything you needed. My blood is on this back that bent under the weight of your education, your whims, your debts. My blood is in this heart that broke every time you treated me like trash, and I kept smiling because I loved you. You are not my blood. You are my greatest mistake. The mistake of believing that giving without limits creates love, when all it creates is abuse. The three of them fell silent. Outside, life in the neighborhood went on. Children played on the street. Adults came home from work. Mothers called out that it was time for dinner. Richard was the last to try. Mom, this isn't over. We're going to contest this will. We're going to prove you weren't in your right mind when you signed it. Go ahead, I said with a calm that surprised me. Fight all you want. You're going to find out that a 64-year-old woman who has finally found her dignity is much stronger than you can possibly imagine. They left without saying goodbye, without a hug, without a kiss, without a single word of regret. They left as they had arrived, as strangers who had only come on business. When I closed the door behind them, Sophia came over and hugged me. Mrs. Miller, are you okay? For the first time in 64 years, my dear, I am perfect. That night, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea, I wrote a single line in my notebook. Today, Helen Miller was born. Because the woman who had lived all those years sacrificing herself for love had died this afternoon. The woman who remained was someone completely different. Someone who had finally chosen herself, and for the first time in her life, she was going to live for herself. The following days were filled with a thick silence that seemed to wrap around the entire house. No one called, no one knocked, not a single text message. For years I had wished for a little peace, but this quiet had a sharp edge, reminding me every second that my own children had become strangers. Yet, I didn't feel fear. I felt a strength I had never known. That same strength pushed me to go out early, to walk through Lincoln Park as if the city belonged to me again. I greeted Mr. Peterson at the corner store, bought a donut at the local bakery, and stopped to chat with Mrs. Rosario, the tamale lady, who offered me a hot chocolate to start the day right. I told her vaguely that I was reorganizing my life. She looked me in the eyes, took my hand, and said, "Good for you, Helen. It's about time you thought about yourself." Those words stayed with me all the way home, like an unexpected blessing. That afternoon, I had a different kind of visit. It wasn't my children. It was Isabel, my lifelong neighbor with her daughter Sophia, my witness, and two friends from the community center. They brought a basket of fruit, flowers, and a warmth that filled the house. I served them coffee in my good china, the same set Laura had wanted to take. As we chatted, I realized it had been years since I'd heard such sincere laughter within these walls. They told me stories of their volunteer work at the Foundation for Senior Women, women who had raised entire families only to be forgotten. Each story was a mirror in which I saw myself. I felt my decision about the will was not just fair, but necessary. For the first time, I understood that my story wasn't unique. It was the story of many. That night, as I was putting the cups away, the landline rang, shattering the calm. I answered with a firm voice. It was Kevin. His tone was no longer arrogant. It sounded tired, almost pleading. "Mom, can we talk? Just you and me? If you come with respect, Kevin, the door is open." Half an hour later, I watched him walk in, tieless and with red-rimmed eyes. He looked like a lost boy, not the calculating lawyer who had tried to scare me days before. He sat on the sofa and looked down. "Mom, I came to apologize, not for the money, though I know I owe you, but for how we've treated you. I got carried away by Richard, by Laura, and by my own ego. I thought because you were my mother, you'd always be there, that I could use your sacrifices as if they were my right. I was so wrong." His confession surprised me, but I didn't let my soft heart take over. I had learned too much. "Kevin, acknowledging a mistake is a first step, but words without actions mean nothing. Respect is shown." He nodded, almost silently. "I know. I'm going to pay you back every dollar. It'll take time, but I'll do it. And I want you to know that even if you don't change the will, I want to be in your life for real, not for an inheritance." I offered him coffee, and for a long time, we talked about simple things. His childhood, movie nights, walks in the park. For a moment, I felt I was getting back the little boy I once feared losing. But as he left, I was clear. 30 days, Kevin. That's still the condition. Not as punishment, but as justice. After he was gone, a mix of sadness and relief washed over me. Maybe there was still a spark of true love left in one of my children. 2 days later, Richard showed up unannounced. He walked in with his usual arrogance, but there was a nervousness to his movements. He was carrying a briefcase and a manila envelope. "Mom, I came to negotiate." "There's nothing to negotiate," I replied, though I invited him to sit. He opened his briefcase and took out several documents. "I've spoken with an attorney friend. We can set up a trust. You get to live in the house for the rest of your life, but we secure the inheritance. That way, nobody loses." I looked at him calmly. "Richard, you still don't get it. This isn't about paperwork. It's about respect. You and your siblings stole from me while I trusted you. I don't need more agreements. I need you to pay what you owe." His jaw tightened. "I can wire you $10,000 right now, and the rest in installments. But I want you to nullify that ridiculous will. What will people say when they find out you gave the house away to strangers? People will say a woman got tired of being abused, and if you give me the money, it won't be to buy your way back into my will. It will be to settle a debt you acknowledged when you took from my account without permission." Richard looked down, took a deep breath, and to my surprise said, "Fine, I can't promise I'll understand, but I'll pay, not for the inheritance." "For you!" I saw an internal struggle in his eyes, perhaps wounded pride, perhaps shame. Maybe his heart wouldn't change overnight, but at least there was a crack in his wall of arrogance. Laura took a little longer. She called me nearly a week later, her voice trembling. "Mom, I need to see you." I agreed. She arrived alone, without makeup, her hair pulled back messily. She looked younger and at the same time, more fragile. "Mom, I've been thinking and crying. I feel like garbage. I treated you like you were a burden. I was only thinking about my debts, my whims. I'm sorry." Her tears didn't seem theatrical this time. She knelt beside me, just as she did as a child when she wanted comfort. "I don't know if I can pay you back everything right away," she continued. "Mark and I are going to sell the car. My jewelry, too. I need to clean up what I did." I hugged her, feeling her shoulders shake. It wasn't an automatic pardon, but it was a start. "Laura, I'm not asking you to return everything tomorrow. I'm asking that you never again use my love as an excuse to abuse me." She nodded, sobbing. That night, as I closed the windows of the house, I felt a new serenity. I didn't know if my children would ever truly change, but I had already changed forever. The woman who endured in silence was gone. The following days were different. Neighbors visited, invited me for walks, brought me food. I discovered a community that had been there all along, just waiting for me to open my eyes. I started teaching sewing classes at the community center, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. Not once did I think of loneliness as a punishment. It was freedom. When the 30-day deadline ended, each of my children had complied, in one way or another. Kevin paid half and signed a payment plan with a notary. Richard made a full transfer after selling a luxury car. Laura arrived with a check that represented the sacrifice of her jewelry and some savings she had hidden from her husband. None of them asked to be put back in the will. Perhaps they finally understood that the most valuable inheritance was regaining a piece of my respect. One afternoon, while filing the receipts for those transfers, I sat down and wrote in my notebook, "This isn't about money, it's about dignity." Today, my children learned that a mother's love is neither bought nor inherited. It is cared for. I looked out the window. The Chicago skyline was painted in hues of pink and orange. For the first time in decades, I felt that the future, however short or long, belonged only to me. And I smiled, because I finally understood that I hadn't lost my children. I had found myself. Several weeks passed after that 30-day deadline. The house once again filled with everyday sounds. The whistle of the kettle, the chirping of sparrows in the ivy, the bells of the church on the corner marking the hour. But inside me, everything was different. I no longer waited anxiously for my children's calls or feared their silences. Every day I woke up without a demanding message felt like a quiet victory. I had reclaimed something more valuable than money: my own time. I started walking through Lincoln Park every morning. The fresh air, the smell of damp earth, and the murmur of the fountains reminded me that I was still alive, that there was still beauty for me. On these walks, I met other older women who, like me, had spent their entire lives caring for everyone but themselves. With them, I shared stories, recipes, and laughter. I discovered I wasn't alone. The loneliness my children had predicted was, in fact, a space for me to find myself again. One Saturday, while having coffee with Isabel and Sophia on my deck, a letter appeared in the mailbox. The envelope bore the letterhead of a law firm. For a moment, a chill ran down my spine. I feared Richard or Mark had decided to start a legal battle. I opened it with steady hands, prepared for the worst. It was a notification that my new will had been officially filed with the county clerk. No lawsuit, no claim. Just confirmation that my decisions were now irrevocable. I smiled. The law was on my side. That same afternoon, I received an unexpected call. Mark, Laura's husband. His voice was tense. "Helen, I'd like to speak with you. Alone." I agreed cautiously. We met at a discreet coffee shop in Wicker Park. He arrived in an expensive suit, but the sweat on his brow betrayed his apparent confidence. He sat across from me, and before I could speak, blurted out the phrase he had come to say, "I need you to reconsider the will. Think about your grandchildren, the future of the family." I looked him in the eye, without blinking. My grandchildren will have their own future. Their parents are responsible for that, not me. Mark clenched his jaw. "I understand your anger, but this can be fixed. We can offer you a monthly stipend, amenities. Just put Laura back as the primary heir. I am not for sale, Mark. Not my love, not my house, not my peace." He shifted uncomfortably, lowering his voice. "Richard thinks you were acting under the influence of others. If a medical exam were needed to prove you were of sound mind," I cut him off calmly. "My attorney already has medical certificates attesting to my lucidity, and I have witnesses, including your own sister-in-law, Sophia, who was present for everything. Any attempt to invalidate my decision will only prove your greed." His face tightened. Without a goodbye, he got up and left. I watched his back recede, small in the coffee shop crowd. I felt a profound relief. I had faced the final attempt at control and had emerged unscathed. The days continued with a new serenity. I began giving workshops on sewing and embroidery at the community center, teaching young and old women how to mend clothes, to create unique pieces with their hands. Every stitch was a reminder of my strength. Some students told me their problems with ungrateful children or abusive husbands. I spoke to them about boundaries, about dignity, about the importance of protecting what costs so much to build. They listened intently, as if every word were a thread of hope. One afternoon, as I was putting away fabrics at the center, Sophia told me, "Mrs. Miller, you're not just teaching sewing, you're teaching self-love." Her words made me smile. Perhaps, without intending to, I was leaving a more valuable inheritance than any house. One Sunday, Richard appeared at the door with his daughter Sophia, my granddaughter by blood, and a small box wrapped in gold paper. The little girl ran to hug me. "Grandma, we made you cookies." It was the first time in months I had felt such a sincere hug from her. Richard remained standing, serious, until I invited him in. We sat in the kitchen. The girl placed the box on the table and went out to the yard to play. "Mom," Richard said, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. I paid the full debt, but that's not enough. I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I became so cold." I listened without interrupting. There was a sincerity in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a young man. "I don't expect you to change overnight," I replied. "I only expect respect. The rest will depend on time." We sat in silence, sharing the aroma of the freshly baked cookies. It was a different kind of silence, without demands or reproaches. The next day, Laura called to invite me to a family gathering at her house. I hesitated. Part of me feared reverting to the compliant mother. Still, I accepted. When I arrived, I was surprised by the warmth with which they received me. Mark, more humble than usual, served me coffee. Laura hugged me with a tenderness I hadn't seen since her teenage years. "Mom," she said, "we want to start over. This house will always be yours to visit whenever you want, and I promise I will never treat you like a burden again." I looked into her eyes, searching for falsehood, but found only regret. I didn't utter grand words. A simple "thank you" was enough. Over the following months, the relationship with my children changed. There were no more demands or manipulations. The visits were brief but genuine. Sometimes we cooked together. Other times we just had tea in silence. I kept my independence intact, and they, little by little, learned to respect it. One summer evening, as the city sky lit up with distant fireworks, I sat on my deck. I thought about everything that had happened. The years of sacrifice, the betrayal, the awakening. I understood that the real triumph wasn't disinheriting them or collecting the money, but choosing myself after a lifetime of being forgotten. The phone rang. It was Kevin. "Mom, I just wanted to say I love you. Not for what you can give me, but because you're my mother." His words, simple and clear, were the best ending to that chapter. I took a deep breath. The warm night air caressed my face. The house, once a source of dispute, was now a symbol of my freedom. And I, Helen Miller, was finally at peace, knowing my worth was never in what I owned, but in what I had learned to protect, my dignity. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, routine found its own rhythm. The house breathed differently. It wasn't the tense silence of before, but a living calm. I would wake up early, make my coffee, and listen to the news with a serenity I had never known. The feeling of having reclaimed my name, my space, and my choices was sweeter than any inheritance. One Thursday afternoon, while sewing a tablecloth for my next class at the community center, I heard a soft knock. Opening the door, I found Sophia, my witness and surrogate granddaughter, with her mother, Isabel. They brought banana bread and an invitation. "Helen, we're organizing a seminar at the Foundation for Senior Women," Isabel said. "We want you to tell your story. There are so many who need to hear it." At first, I hesitated. Public speaking had never been my thing, especially about something so personal. But then I thought of the women who, like me, might be enduring humiliation in silence. I accepted. The day of the talk, the room was full. There were women of all ages, some with canes, others with small grandchildren in their laps. My hands trembled as I took the microphone. But when I began to recount my experience, the years of sacrifice, the betrayal, the recovery of my dignity, the trembling vanished. I saw tears in many eyes. Afterward, an elderly white-haired woman approached me and said, "Thank you. Today I decided I will not let my children treat me like a piece of furniture." I felt that every word had been worth it. That same weekend, Kevin arrived with his teenage son, Matthew. They brought a toolbox. "Mom, we came to fix the leak in the upstairs bathroom." my son said with a shy smile. I watched them work, and something inside me softened. It wasn't a gesture of obligation, but of genuine care. When they finished, Matthew sat with me in the kitchen and between sips of hot chocolate told me, "Grandma, my dad told me how brave you are. He said he learned from you what it means to respect family." Those simple words hit me deeper than any formal apology. Days later, Laura surprised me with a special invitation. She wanted me to accompany her to a meeting of her support group for women entrepreneurs. At first, I thought it would be awkward, but I accepted. At the meeting, I listened to young women talk about business, projects, and independence. Laura introduced me as the strongest woman I know. I felt proud, not of being her mother, but of being recognized as a person who had found her voice. While my relationship with them improved, my life outside the family also blossomed. The community center proposed opening a permanent sewing and embroidery workshop in my name. "Helen's Workshop," they said, and I laughed because my name finally had a profound meaning. Every week, more students arrived, and with them, new stories. Women who had worked their whole lives without receiving gratitude. Women who were learning to say no while sewing their first stitches. I learned from them too, that it's never too late to start over. One rainy afternoon, I received a letter from the foundation to which I had left the house in my will. They thanked me for the future donation and invited me to tour their facilities. I went the next day. They greeted me with flowers and smiles. I saw elderly women playing bingo, laughing like girls, participating in music and painting workshops. I felt an unexpected peace knowing that when my time came, this place would be home to my legacy. It didn't matter if my children understood or not. My decision now had a human face, full of laughter and life. As I left, I found a surprise. Richard was waiting for me outside. He held a large umbrella and, without a word, shielded me from the rain. "I knew you'd be here," he said. "I wanted to walk you back." We walked together in the drizzle. We didn't talk much, but his gesture said more than words. When we reached my door, he stopped. "Mom, I don't know if I can ever erase what I did, but every day I try to be the son you deserve." I hugged him, briefly but sincerely. In that moment, I understood that forgiveness isn't a blank check. It's a path you walk, step by step. Time continued its course. My garden bloomed like never before. I planted new pots of climbing roses and geraniums that filled the yard with vibrant color. In the afternoons, I would sit on the deck and embroider while the neighborhood kids played. I no longer needed big parties or constant calls. My life had its own rhythm. One Sunday morning, Laura took me out for breakfast at a new cafe that had opened in the neighborhood. There, over strong coffee and artisanal bread, she took my hand. "Mom, I've been saving to pay you back everything. I'm almost done with the last part. But beyond the money, I want you to know that I learned from you. I will never let my children see me as something to be used and discarded." Her eyes, full of determination, made me feel that perhaps my pain had not been in vain. That night, alone in my house, I reflected on the journey. I had gone from being an invisible woman to someone who inspired others. My children, though it took them time, were beginning to understand that love is measured not in material goods, but in respect and responsibility. Before going to bed, I opened my notebook, the one where I had written my freedom plan, and added one last sentence. "My true inheritance is not a house or a bank account. It is the certainty that every woman can be reborn, no matter her age." I closed the notebook and turned off the light. Outside, the city murmured its nightly music. I, Helen Miller, felt at peace with the past, proud of the present, and for the first time, excited for the future that still awaited me. The winter arrived in Chicago with a chill that seeped through the window frames, but my house felt warmer than ever. The walls, which once seemed to weigh on my back, now breathed freedom. Every morning, I would start the coffee pot and watch the steam for a few minutes, grateful for the peace I had won. There were no more calls demanding money, no more visits to rifle through my drawers. My children had learned the hard way that my life belonged to me. I started receiving invitations from the Foundation for Senior Women to participate in more ambitious projects. They wanted me to help design a microloan program for women who, like me, had worked their whole lives without recognition. I accepted with enthusiasm. Each meeting reminded me of how capable I still was, regardless of my age. My weathered hands, which once only sewed for my children, now outlined plans to transform the lives of other women. One afternoon, while reviewing documents for the foundation, the doorbell rang. It was Kevin, with a bouquet of flowers and an envelope. "Mom, today I finished paying you back," he said, handing me the receipt for the final transfer. "Every dollar I owed you is now settled." His eyes reflected more than just compliance. There was pride, a kind of relief. I hugged him, feeling that the boy I had raised finally understood the value of the word responsibility. That same week, Laura arrived with her children. They brought a basket of pastries and a shy smile. "Mom, we sold the old car, and I've finished paying back everything I owed you. You have no idea what a lesson this has been for me. I've started a small baking business. I want you to be the first to try my cookies." I tried a sugar and cinnamon one, and I couldn't help but smile. In its taste, there was something of reconciliation, of a love that, though late, was beginning to rebuild itself. Richard was the last to fulfill his promise. One evening, he appeared with a briefcase, unannounced. He sat across from me with a humble expression I didn't recognize. "Mom, here's the final deposit. But more than the money, I want to give you this." He took out a smaller envelope. "It's a letter where I acknowledge all the harm I caused you. If you ever doubt my remorse, read it." I didn't open it then. I preferred to put it in the table drawer, like a silent promise that he had, at least, begun to understand. With each visit, I felt a wound closing, not because the money erased the past, but because each payment was a sign of respect, and above all, because I no longer needed their approval to feel whole. While my relationship with them healed, my life outside the family blossomed. Helen's workshop became a meeting point for women throughout the neighborhood. They came with stories of neglect, abuse, and loneliness. Some had been humiliated by their own children, others by husbands or bosses. With every stitch I taught them, I reminded them that the most important thread was that of dignity. Many times they would tell me, "If you could start over at 64, so can we." One afternoon, the director of the foundation proposed something unexpected. They wanted to publish a small book with my testimony and those of other women. I hesitated at first, but then I thought of all the hands that could find courage in those pages. I accepted. I spent nights writing, reviewing painful memories and also victories. Every word was an act of liberation. When the book was ready, they organized a launch at a local library. Neighbors, students from the workshop, and volunteers from the foundation all came, and to my surprise, so did my 3 children. They sat in the front row. As I read a passage about the importance of setting boundaries, I saw tears in Richard's and Laura's eyes. Even Kevin, always so composed, clapped loudly at the end. After the event, they approached. Richard spoke first. "Mom, this book is a mirror we needed. Thank you for not giving up on us." Laura hugged me in silence, and Kevin simply said, "I'm proud of you." Those simple words meant more than any inheritance. Over time, I began receiving letters from women in other cities who had read my story. Some called me brave, others a role model. I only considered myself a woman who had decided to stop being invisible. But every message confirmed that my voice, once silenced, now served to ignite others. One Sunday morning, while watering my roses, Sophia, the neighbor who had been my witness, came by with news. "Mrs. Miller, the foundation wants to name a room after you. They say your story has inspired hundreds of women." I felt a lump in my throat. I remembered every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. I never imagined that my pain would become hope for so many. The months passed, and life filled with small gestures I hadn't valued before. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery, the greetings from children on their way home from school, the chirping of birds in the morning. I didn't need luxuries or trips. My greatest wealth was a peace that no one could buy or inherit. My children continued to visit, this time out of desire, not interest. We cooked together, laughed with the grandchildren, and reminisced about their childhood. I maintained my independence, and they learned that true love is not measured in dollars or property. One summer night, as the city slept, I opened the letter Richard had left me. His words were simple but profound. Thank you for saving me from myself. You taught me that the greatest inheritance is the respect one learns to give. I tucked it into my notebook, next to the first sentence I wrote months ago. Freedom plan. I looked up at the ceiling, grateful. I didn't know how much more time I had in this world, but I was certain that every remaining day would be mine. Not my children's, not guilt's, not habits, just mine. When I turned off the light, the silence of the house was no longer a reminder of abandonment, but an embrace of independence. I finally understood that the real victory wasn't changing a will, but rescuing my own life from the hands of those who thought they owned it. The following years passed with the serenity of a dawn that no longer fears the night. My house became a gathering place for neighbors, friends from the workshop, and volunteers from the foundation. Sundays were a festival of voices, laughter, and the aroma of freshly baked bread. With each visit, I felt life giving me something I had ignored for decades, the certainty that true family is chosen and cultivated with mutual respect. My children kept visiting, but now they arrived without demands or calculations. Kevin often brought Matthew to help me in the garden. Together, we planted new flowers that colored the yard with joy. Richard, calmer now, would sit with me for coffee, telling me about his progress in therapy and how he was trying to be a better father. Laura would arrive with her basket of baked goods, proud of her business that was growing by word of mouth. There was a humility in them I had never seen, a will to repair what they had once broken. One spring afternoon, we organized a special celebration at the foundation, the first anniversary of Helen's workshop. When I entered the room, dozens of women greeted me with applause. There were students who had learned to sew their first blouses, others who now sold their embroidery to support their families. Every face was a reflection of resilience and dignity. In that moment, I knew that my true legacy wasn't in material possessions, but in the lives I had inspired. At the end of the event, my children approached with a wooden box. Inside was a photo album they had prepared themselves. On each page, memories of my life, my wedding, the birth of each of them, family parties, portraits of my mother and my grandchildren. On the last page, a note written by all of them. Thank you for teaching us that love is shown with respect. You are our example of strength and freedom. I felt tears fall, not of pain, but of a quiet gratitude that healed old scars. That night back home, I sat on the deck with the album on my lap. I looked at the city sky, lit by shy stars, and took a deep breath. I remembered every moment of struggle, every dawn of work, every tear shed when I thought I had lost everything. Now I understood that without that journey, I would not have arrived at this peace. There was no resentment, only a serene acceptance that life shapes us through our wounds. Over time, the foundation decided to make Helen's workshop a permanent program. Young volunteers learned from me, and I from them. Some afternoons, as the sun set and the last student said goodbye, I would stay alone in the room, listening to the echo of laughter. I smiled, thinking that even when I was no longer here, these walls would continue to tell my story. My grandchildren grew up knowing that Grandma was a woman who never let anyone hurt her with impunity. They asked me for advice for their own paths, and I repeated the lesson it took me a lifetime to learn: love without losing yourselves. One autumn day, while watering my roses, Laura came by to tell me they had decided to organize a family meal in my honor. We want to celebrate your birthday differently, she explained, not just with gifts, but by remembering what you taught us. The idea moved me. The party was simple but full of love. Music, food made by everyone, and a long table in the garden. I sat at the center, surrounded by children, grandchildren, neighbors, and friends from the workshop. No one spoke of inheritances or properties. We just shared stories and laughter until night covered the city. That night, before sleeping, I returned to my notebook, the same one where I had once written Freedom Plan. I added a final sentence. Today, I close the circle. My children understood. I healed, and my dignity remains intact. I closed the notebook with a peace I never imagined. I knew that time is finite, but it didn't scare me. I had lived long enough to understand that a true inheritance doesn't fit in deeds or bank accounts. My greatest achievement was choosing myself and, in doing so, teaching those around me that real love is never born from fear or obligation. When I lay down that night, I felt my mother, that brave woman who taught me to resist, smiling in some corner of the universe. I closed my eyes and let the silence embrace me, certain that, no matter what happened, my story would live on in every person who learned to say enough because of me. Life lesson. Dignity is not inherited or bought. It is defended every day. To love does not mean to sacrifice yourself until you disappear. It means knowing how to set boundaries so that respect can flourish. It is never too late to reclaim your voice, regardless of your age or scars. Have you ever lived through, or do you know someone who has, a situation where they had to fight for their own dignity against their own family? Respond in the comments and tell us your experience or that of someone close to you. If this story moved you, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach those who need to hear it today.